Good morning. Wow, that's loud. Good morning. Gosh, you guys, we're so happy you're here. People are still streaming in. You guys, there's lots of seats in the front because that's the last seats to go. So if you're late, there's seats here, 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 here. Come on up to the front. Don't be shy. Hey, I wanted to introduce you guys to Ed McCahill. He is a Canyon Hills member. He works for Blue Trust. And he is here to share with you guys today, answer questions. Hopefully this will be really helpful to you guys down the line. And let's just welcome Ed up here.
Thanks, Lisa. As Lisa said, my name is Ed McCahill. My wife Cindy and I are members here, and I serve on the usher team, and I'm a life group leader, and my wife is a photographer. So if you ever saw somebody roaming around forcing you into group situations, her name is Cindy. You can say hi. Tell her that you met her husband. So anyway, we are Encore eligible ourselves, but both of us are working, doing careers that we still love to do and feel called to. So that's why you don't see either of us here on the Thursdays. But we're honored to be here. How many remember 2 years ago, Chris Scotcher from my team was in here talking about something similar? Okay, good. How many of you took action based upon that? Oh, don't put your hands up. So, because this is one of those things that people really don't want to think about. So, a quick little story, 30 plus years ago, we have 4 kids, but at the time we had 1 and number 2 was on the way. And so, we have 2 boys and then 2 girls. So, we had 1, he's a year and a half old, and we were about 6 months away from the second one being born. And my wife had a really good friend from her Bible study that was an attorney, and she had a child the same exact age as our firstborn. And so we just got in a conversation with her. She's an estate attorney. That's what she does estate planning. And so we went and met with her. And it just seemed like a good idea. Our net worth was 0. We had a property. We had moved here from the Boston area where I grew up. She grew up in Bellevue, but we moved here because of a job change for me. And so it just felt like even though our net worth was probably 0, I was working at Microsoft at the time, and I thought, well, we might actually make a little bit of something. We should be smart about it. So anyway, we go and sit with our friend and spend a couple of hours, and we left there, and my wife said, I am never coming back. I am never coming back. And I said, why are you never coming back? She said, I don't want to think about it. And she's at that point 6 months pregnant. And she said, I don't want to think about death. We're just still having our family now. I don't want to think about death. And so I'm like, uh-oh. So a couple weeks later, our friend Tanya calls us up and says, okay, I'm ready for you guys to come and review the documents and sign them. My wife says, I told you, I'm not going back. I mean, I'm never going back. So I said, okay. So now I'm like, but we have to go do that. We have to, care for the kids. Nope, not going back. So anyway, I just kept praying, Lord, give me an answer. Give me an answer. Give me an answer. How do I get her back? And all of a sudden it clicked in. Now remember at the time, Tacoma's a great city now, but at the time it wasn't a great city. So I'm looking at our second son was born, and he was a week or 2 old. And I turned to my wife and I said, look at this beautiful little ward of the state. She says, what does that mean? I said, well, if something happens to both of us, what's going to happen? I said, what's going to happen? She says, oh, my mom and my sisters will take the kids. Well, that's not exactly how the law works, okay? You have to go to court, and so it's not, they're not an approved foster home in the interim, and so on. I said, we need to go and get those documents signed so we can tell the court where we want our kids to go. She's like, pick the phone, calls her friend. How soon can we come in? And so, well, that's at the front end of life. Now you move into a little bit later in life, of course, and now you're thinking, what kind of a mess am I willing to leave behind to my heirs? Because all of us are going to be passing away. Let me see which, jump on the right slide here. So there's a little legal stuff I have to put on there. But you see here, seasons are changing, right? All of us are in a different season of life, in our case, than we were still having kids early in life. The kids are 3 of the 4 are married, and we got grandkids and the whole deal. So seasons are changing. You see, Mr. Frosty, it's March. Time to talk estate planning. Well, we are in that season. We're in that season when things start to melt away. We start to melt away. So the idea is that you can wait as long as you want, but it's a bad idea to not do it, okay? So you can get ahead of the curve, and it's wonderful. If you get behind the curve, though, the mess you leave behind is for somebody else, but it's not a happy mess, okay? Because they have to figure stuff out. It's time-consuming, it's costly, and I'll talk about all that here. So number one, though, when you think about estate planning, we're all Christians, and think about estate planning, God owns all of it. You see right here. To the Lord God belong the heavens, the earth, and everything in it. You know what's in your 401ks and IRAs? Everything that belongs to the Lord. You know what's in your home, your cars, your jewelry, and all that stuff? Everything that belongs to the Lord. So we can go stand up in heaven with the Lord and be happily ever after and realize that our family has no idea where your stuff even is, okay? Let alone that. So, and it's true, it happens all the time. In fact, a little sidebar, one of the investments we use is a huge global real estate company. And about 5 years ago, they did research. Now, COVID was a time when a lot of seniors, unfortunately, passed away. And so they did research to see all their different asset classes. They have big apartment buildings and Amazon warehouses and all this kind of stuff. And they had a really nice self-storage portfolio they had for decades. But they decided to exit that because they went and did a lot of research. It's Blackstone, I don't know if you know that company. They manage $9 trillion worth of real estate assets. So they have the money to do this great research, and they did it. And what they found out was that there was a big drop-off in storage rentals from 2020 to 2021. They're like, whoa, what's behind that? It turned out that a lot of baby boomers' parents, I'm a baby boomer, many of you in the room are baby boomers, a lot of our parents had passed away. And when they found out, when they go to settle everything, they found out that they had storage units full of the old living room furniture, full of the old dining room furniture, full of great-grandma's china, et cetera, et cetera. And when the parents downsized, the baby boomers' parents downsized, they put all into storage, and it just automatically hit the bank account or the credit card every month, and the kids knew nothing about it. But the parents kept thinking, oh, I'm sure my kids are going to want this. I'm sure they're going to want that. So guess what? Guess what the percentage of kids who wanted the stuff? I don't know, it was single digit, right? So that all that to say that they decided that they sold that entire portfolio of self-storage, which is large, very large. And they saw, what's the next thing coming? 2021 this was, data centers. So they spent $9 billion buying data centers then. Now they have $50 billion of data centers. But they saw the storage industry, the parents really want their kids to have the stuff, but truthfully, the kids really don't want our stuff. And I know my kids don't really want our stuff. So my kids, one of them lives here, and 3 of them live in other states. But the fact of the matter is that what we want for our kids isn't necessarily what our kids want from us. Okay, so those conversations are important to have and so on. But when you think about that, we all, we set this stuff aside for a long time. And my wife, she has a hard time letting go of stuff. For me, it's like, out it goes. But my parents retired a little bit earlier, and I grew up in Massachusetts, and they bought a place in Florida, became Florida residents. It was 2 condos, which meant all the junk got given away. So all that stuff was when my dad was 60, and they gave it all away, which was really great. So anyway, I'm going to encourage you today to be thinking, since it's all the Lord's, and the second verse up there, the earth is the Lord and everything in it, Psalm 24:1, one of my favorite verses out there in the industry that we're in, and then the whole earth is mine. Exodus. So God owns it all. And if you come away with one idea today, it's that God owns it all, but we are the stewards. And a steward is simply a manager of another's property. The another is God. He owns it all, right? So we have to be thinking, okay, we're managing. Some of you have been managers of people. You've certainly been, if you have a family, of managers of your family. You're involved in many things, I'm sure, not just Encore. So the idea is, how can I be the best manager of God's possessions? And Matthew 25, verses 10 to 25, I guess it is. And it's Matthew 14, 10 to 25. And that's the parable of the stewards. The one guy got 5 and doubled it. The one guy got 2 and doubled it. One guy got 1 and buried it. Let's not be those who bury this last piece of the things we have to do, okay? So that's important. So now some practical realities. Number 1, we're all going to die. It's just, we're all going to die. That's what it's incumbent upon man, right? We're going to all pass away one day. Number 2, we'll take nothing with us. You know the old lie, you never saw a hearse hauling a U-Haul, because you can't take it with it. It all stays behind. Number 3, we'll probably die at a time other than we would like. So, it's going to happen to all of us eventually, right? Someone else will get our stuff. We have to leave it all behind, so it's going to go to somebody else. Then we can only decide before we die who gets our stuff after we die. So you can have a verbal conversation if you have a son or a daughter. The daughter might want the china or the silver, and the son might want, the basketball and the timeshare, something like that, right? So, but you have to put it in writing, and it has to be notarized in order for it to actually happen. So it can be very simple when you pass away if your affairs are in order. You've all heard that term before. But if it's not, it's really difficult. And then you get into these really messy situations. Anyway, so there's two types of estate plans. One is a will. All of you are familiar with a will. Some of you might be intimidated by the term trusts. But a trust is just another legal construct. The truth is, a trust is more expensive, and I'll talk about the next slide, I think, but more expensive to put together, but not much more. But the settlement side in a trust is really, really easy because you name a person as a trustee, and I'll talk more about that in just a minute. But trust versus will, so keep that in mind. Now get this one. Over here you see 56% of Americans believe estate planning is important. All right, so you can raise your hand if you're of the 44% who don't think it's important, because I'll be watching you the whole time I'm speaking today, because it is very important. 66% of Americans over 65 have a will. That's pretty nice. So we have wills. At least 2/3 of us do have wills, and again, I hope a high percentage, if not all of you, have them. Now, but few Christians connect estate planning, which is what this is, wills and trusts, estate planning with biblical stewardship. But it is. Remember, we're the stewards, managers of God's property, so it's incumbent upon us to do something. So when we're done, the kids all know, and a lot of people keep it secret. Most parents don't talk to their kids. Again, baby boomers, parents typically don't give us a good model because they almost never tell you what they have or where it is, or what their plan is. You just know they have some money someplace. But baby boomers and so on need to be a little bit more verbal. Not directly. You don't want them knowing too much of your business maybe, but just tell them where everything is. Hey, you know what? There's a copy of the estate plan here. And in the estate plan, it doesn't name dollars. It names home. It names cars. It names jewelry. It names investment accounts and things like that. If you have retirement accounts, IRAs, Roth IRAs, 401ks or 403bs, 457s, estate plans, if you have those, make sure you have the beneficiaries updated. Okay? You can do it now. You can do it if you may have already done it, but review your beneficiaries because that doesn't go through wills or trusts. That goes straight to the people whose names are in it. So you can't say in your will, which you must be likely to get, you can't say in your will, and I want my IRA to go to my second oldest. Because whatever is in the beneficiaries in your IRA or whatever your retirement savings plan, that's where it has to go by law, okay? Bypasses the court, it goes straight to those people. So you can do that. By the way, and I think I have this later, but an IRA, if you're planning on being charitable through your estate, gift part of your IRA. Because the IRA, you have a 10-year window from when you pass away. If you're married, if the second of you passes away, from that point, a clock starts running, 10 years to get all that money out. Okay? Usually it's during the time when your kids are in their peak earnings years, and they have to take it as ordinary income. Okay? Homes and taxable investment accounts, no problem. They get what's called a step up in basis on the date of the second death, or the first death if you're single, and they get that, and that means the cost basis is as of that day, not if you bought those shares of Microsoft 30 years ago or Amazon 25 years ago, something like that. That day, so there's no capital gains tax due. But the IRAs don't work that way. They completely bypass it. So double check your beneficiaries in your retirement plans. It should be easy to do. Call if you're working with a Schwab or Fidelity or somebody, great, just call them up and ask. If you're working with an advisor or a stockbroker, call them up and ask the question and make sure all you need is their formal name, their date of birth, and their social security number. That's it. And you probably have that from claiming them as dependents a long time ago. So anyway, but remember the key today is to help you connect estate planning with biblical stewardship. That's the message I really want to bring to you today, okay? It's, again, you just want to be as faithful to the Lord who's provided all these wonderful things and this great church and all these other amazing blessings in our lives. So you want to make sure that you got those affairs in order. Okay, so what happens if you don't have estate documents? Number one, this is the worst part. You've probably heard of all these wealthy families who don't get along at all. Like, let's look at the royal family in London, right? Very dysfunctional. A lot of times that happens because there's assets, income, and or big money involved. And so if it isn't clear what to do, or the kids haven't been trained, if you have a fair amount of wealth, kids need to be trained how to handle it. So, and you want to let them know sooner than later. So we have, in our firm, it's a nationwide firm, and we have something called the family office for the really wealthy people. You know what? They don't really manage any assets. They manage some, but not many, not like my division is the biggest one. They don't manage many assets. because a lot of it's tied up in real estate, very wealthy families. This is at the high end, with real estate, business interests, and things like that. But what they spend their time doing, my peers in that division, they spend the time with the second and third and fourth generations of the families, helping them understand how to be stewards of wealth. So it's not really managing money or doing financial planning, some of that, but primarily it's helping them understand they're going to receive all this responsibility for all this wealth. They don't actually take title to it. They do some fancy trusts and so on to push the tax bill to the well into the future. But my point is that that's what they do, because that aspect of stewardship is you have to be trained. If not, you end up surprised you're in charge of a $150 million estate that you know nothing about and you're not interested in knowing anything about. But you are happy you have $150 million, but it's not cash, okay? You can't go spend it. It's in business interests or property interests and things like that. So it gets a little complicated, so we have a division that just does that. And that's, again, not the piece that I work in. So, but you get in these sibling squabbles. Mom said I could have this. When you go back and look at the estate documents, it doesn't say it, okay? Now you're sitting in front of a judge with an attorney billing you by the hour, and you're arguing this thing out saying, well, but Mom told me. Well, Mom told me I could have it. When was that? Was that 7 years ago? Well, Mom told me 10 years ago I could have it. And you get in these completely fruitless things, and it ends up creating division in your heirs, okay? It doesn't have to be, if you don't have kids, it's not yours, but somebody's going to get your stuff. We already established that in the previous slide. So whoever's there is going to say, well, Aunt so-and-so told me I could have this. Well, they told two people. They forgot that they told two people. So writing it down is the best thing, the smartest thing, and wisest thing you can do. But it's important, because if not, you could create division among siblings, and every time they went over to visit their sibling's home that has the thing that Mom said they could have, they argued about it, it triggers that whole sense, oh no, I'm so mad about that still. I can't believe you stole that from me, right? So just save your family for another generation. Give them the grace of writing it all down. Now, so as I said, instead of a blessing, it causes division. And that division could run from generations. There's a few stories, some of these TV shows, serial type TV shows that, the siblings are always going at one another, fighting over daddy said this and mommy said that and so on. Anyway, estate settlement without estate plans can be very costly and time consuming. I mentioned you're going to have your estate attorney. Your estate is paying for this, by the way, not your kids. But they're going to get less because the attorney's billing you by the hour, sitting in court, arguing over these various things. So it's time-consuming and it's costly. And a judge who never knew you is going to decide who gets what. Is that what you really want to do? Oh, I don't want to deal with this thing. I'll let the judge figure it out. Well, who's the judge? Well, around here, some of the judges don't share my values, so they're not share your values too. So they're going to be doing some things that making some decisions for your stuff. That's really the Lord's stuff to get to people that aren't necessarily what you had ever intended, and maybe you've never thought about it before. But you do need to be intentional about this piece of it all. Okay. So now you look over here. Are your wills current? Okay. Well, some people in the room probably never made a will, and that's okay. But you want to start making a will. Sooner the better. You've heard of places like LegalZoom and U.S. Legal Forums and so on, those online places. They're not bad, especially for seniors, unless you're raising your grandchildren or something like that. The reason that you get it, the one catch is you need to have someone who's a notary notarize your wills, okay? So the reason you do that, that means I formally sign this in front of someone. My office is 3 miles from here in Bothell. We have 2 notaries on staff. It's free. If you want to go do that route, LegalZoom or one of those places, download the wills and do it. Just call the office and ask to speak with a notary. We're a Christian firm through and through nationwide. Trust me, they will give you the grace. It's free. Just stop in, they'll sign it, they'll stamp it and so on, and then it's legit. And you always want to get at least 2 copies of that, okay? So, but if you want to do your own thing, you can do that. If not, there's some great estate attorneys around who I think would serve you very, very well. And so go get that done. It's easy. Now, are they current? Life situations change, okay? We're all in different stages we were 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. My little infants who could have been wards of the state living in a group home in Tacoma with people we don't know are now, they're often got families of their own. So, but you lose a loved one, okay? You could lose a spouse or maybe an heir loses their life, okay? Kids are launched, you don't need guardianship. That's the one thing that we were really dealing with back in the beginning was who's going to get our kids, who's going to care for our kids, and how do we give them money, we didn't have any money back then, but how do we give them money, life insurance, to help them raise up our kids? We're thinking, by the time we got 4 kids, it's like, oh, and they were in a Christian school in Redmond called the Bear Creek School, and that was expensive. So we had to put the money toward the things that we wanted. So anyway, but now that kids are launched, we didn't need that part. So when we updated our wills a few years ago, we took that out. Sometimes people move to another state, right? So if people moved here, for instance, in the audience, if you moved from some other state and your will is from Arizona or the East Coast, somewhere out there, your estate will be settled in that state. Not a good idea. So you want to update that and have a Washington state will. And if you're visiting from out of state, make sure your estate documents are from the state that you reside in, because you want to have it there. My parents moved up from Florida. They spent 20 years down there for the winters, and they were Florida residents for that time, because Massachusetts, where we grew up, is known as Taxachusetts. And it's very expensive. And the whole Northeast is very expensive for taxes. So that's why people get down to Florida. They go down there and establish their domicile there, because there's no estate taxes down there. So it's pretty easy. And so people like it. It's very simple down there, too. So my parents decided they want to move back up, because that's where most of the kids are. I'm the third oldest of 7 kids, and 5 of them live there. I'm out here, and I have a sister in New York. But they wanted to be by the kids for their last however many years God was going to give them, which was several more, thankfully. But nonetheless, my dad ended up, through a long surgery, ended up getting a brain fog, which we might call into the category of dementia. He was a CFO, super smart in his finances all those years. But what happened was he couldn't process that stuff anymore. So here's my mom, who never wrote a check in her life, like literally never wrote a check in her life, and she's in charge. And here I am, 2,500 miles away. So, but I have siblings out there, so I was kind of remote quarterbacking the whole thing. But they updated the estate documents, and I had them do a trust. Because they didn't own, they were living in a senior place, and so they didn't really have any big assets other than just one investment account. So when later they passed away, it was settled in the state of Massachusetts, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And my brother lived in New Hampshire, but not far away from Boston, about an hour. So he was the trustee. We set that up because he's right there. And so it settled very, very, very simply. But it was very easy. There weren't a lot of, again, the assets, really one asset was just an investment account that they were using to kind of support their living. That was it. So it made it really simple for them. But getting them out of Florida would have meant trips to Florida, try to find an attorney in Florida, and all that stuff. And it would have been complicated. It's not hard if you live in Florida, settle in Florida, but it's hard if you're in a different state. So, and they were, again, residents in Massachusetts, but with an out-of-state will. So it just gets messy, and Massachusetts would have made that hard too. So plus there's the state law changes. Right now we hear some talk about the president wanting to extend the Tax Cut and Jobs Act, which he put in place in 2017. That greatly increased the amount, the limit before the federal government takes any of your taxes. Okay, now it's like for a couple, it's like $27.5 million. But back then it was way smaller than that, small fraction of that. So right now that's all scheduled to so-called sunset, which means expire at the end of 2025. So if they don't get that through, I'm pretty confident they will get that through, but if they don't get it through, then anybody who's in the, probably above about 7 million, 8 million is going to have a federal tax due, okay? So Washington State, of course, always ones to lead the curve there. They're at 4.4 million per couple. Above that, you start paying a lot of taxes. So that doesn't change with the feds. The feds are way up here, but the Washington State at 2.2 million roughly apiece, 4.4 million per couple. They chime in on 10% in the next million, 14% in the million after that, then 15, 16, up to 20%. So you want to be mindful of all this stuff. Washington State does not have a gift tax. So if you're planning on, especially if you get later in life, if you're planning on passing along, pick a number, we'll say higher than 4.4, let's just say planning on $6.4 million, well, you're going to pay, your state's going to pay $100,000 on that first million from 4.4 to 5.4, and $140,000 from 5.4 to 6.4 million. So that's $240,000 that's going to go to Washington State. If you don't need that money and you plan to give it to your kids or give it to, well, I guess charity's fine because that would bypass it, but if you want to do that, do it while you're living. Okay? It's so much simpler. You wouldn't have to file an estate tax return in the state. Remember, no gift tax in Washington, just an estate tax or a death tax, right? Feds, though, have a gift tax and they have an estate tax, but it's so high, you would, if you give above $19,000 to any one person a year, you have to file a federal gift tax return. It's not going to cost you anything. You just file it with your tax return, and they'll know. But if you're married, you don't have $27.5 million now, then it doesn't matter. But you do have to file it. So that's just checking your box for them. More complicated maybe than I should talk to in the room. If you have a question, just let me know. By the way, some graffiti's falling. Is that my cue that I'm done? So, so anyway, so that's estate taxes, estate laws do change. So just be alert to that. If you have something that's older, go review it and make sure it's current, okay? Next thing we have, why don't people have wills? And you know who you are, but 50%, this is actual verifiable research, but 50% of people don't have wills because they procrastinate. Oh, I want to do it. I mean to do it. And I'll tell you, I'm a get-it-done type person for some things, and I'm a great procrastinator for other things, okay? When it comes to financial stuff, I'm a get-it-done person. When it comes to projects around the house that are important to my wife, I procrastinate. So, and some of you are my kindred spirits, I'm sure, here. So, but people procrastinate. It's easy to set aside, well, I started, and we got busy and so on. I don't really want to deal with it. It's icky like my wife, procrastinating. I don't want to talk about death. No, we're still having kids. I don't want to talk about death. So procrastination, 50%. That's 50% of people. They believe their estate's too small. Well, I will tell you right now, there's no estate too small. No estate too small to have even a simple will. That's when you go out to, U.S. legal forms. Oh, wait a minute. This is a word from the Lord. It said, if you have not done it yet, you have till 2:30 today. You know who you are, okay? So, must be fun here on high school night. But that was a little scripture verse. It's like a fortune cookie. That's for you. Okay. So, but your estate is not too small to do this. Okay. So go ahead and do it. You don't have to do it today, but get on it, right? So don't procrastinate. Just go out and do it. Again, download if you need it. If not, if you have an attorney that you know or you need a referral, call me. But there's some really great ones out there. A lot of people who share our values and so on that really, if you say, well, I want to be a little bit charitable, some attorneys go, what are you crazy? But a Christian attorney says, oh, great. So anyway, that's good. They don't know how to do it. That's only 6%, and the last one, they think it's too expensive. Well, you can download a will on the internet for between $60 and $100. That's not too expensive. You can do it yourself, and we will, for free, we'll notarize your form. So it'll cost you $60 to $100 to do it. So again, even if it's not everything you want, it's something because there are no estates that are too small, okay? So keep it simple, get it done. You can change it later. And whatever you do now in 2025, you replace whatever you did a long time ago. Or if you've never done it, really important. But if not, it's the will you had from a long time ago, even though your life circumstances have changed and your family circumstances may have changed, okay? So the next thing we have up here, also under this, is that some heirs may need more than others, okay? It happens. You may have somebody who's in a job they feel greatly called to, and they're great at it. You have somebody who's in a job that pays a fortune. They're called to that as well, right? But that pays a fortune. They might be very, very financially successful. And you might have two kids that say, oh, I'm just going to split it right down the middle. But one is never going to need a dime of money. And the other one is going to need, they could really be blessed by the money. So it really calls for wisdom here. But some kids need more than others. And it could be their stage of life, or it could be just, meaning they could be just out of college, or young adults starting out looking to save for the first home or something. You don't have to wait until you pass away to give your kids some money, okay? But Ron Blue, the founder of my firm, he always says, love your children equally, but treat them uniquely, because each of those children are unique. And their needs are unique, their personalities are unique, their gifts and callings are unique. Everything is unique. So look at them that way, but then, and just be open about it to your kids. Listen, if one's financially successful, one's not so much, say, listen, just so you know, we're updating our wills. We love you dearly, we love you exactly the same, but we're going to give a little more to the one who needs more. Now, if they need more, but they have no initiative and so on, be very cautious. Don't give money just because you might perpetuate their lack of drive, their lack of vision, lack of energy, and so on. So be careful. A lot of wisdom involved there. Talk to somebody you know, maybe one of the pastors here, and say, hey, how do I deal with this thing, okay? But you want to be cautious. But if they're trying to start a business, hey, maybe you could help them a little bit. If they want to buy their first home, you can help them a little bit if you have the resources to do it. But if not, remember, love them equally, but treat them uniquely because they are created by God, unique in his image, but unique in their personality. Now, a lot of times you've maybe got more than you want or more than you need and more than you really want to pass on. So, or you just desire to be charitable. So that's a great situation. I did a lot of research on that a long time ago for us, for our family. We have 4 kids, as I mentioned. And what we decided to do was we created a 5th child. It's charity, right? Ministries. So we're going to divide it all up. We have a fifth child. We have a donor advised fund. Some of you may know what that is. Put it in there. We've told that group where to send that money. And so it's good, but they don't necessarily need, we're not like overflowing with wealth here by any means, but the idea would be to give a lesson to the next generation. Because mom and dad, my parents had 7 kids. We all got 1/7. Of course, you divide any estate by 7, it's not going to change your life. But the point is that that's something else you could show. It doesn't have to be an equal like we did, but you could just put even 2%, 5%, 10% in. But it just shows the kids that, hey, we want to honor the Lord with a portion of the wealth that he's given us, okay? So that's good. And IRA, as I mentioned early, IRAs, that's a great place to do it from. So you could just, instead of changing your will, just put it into your beneficiaries and say, X percent's going to go to Canyon Hills, going to go to World Vision, going to go whoever your favorite ministries are. You can put several on there. It's just all percentages. But if you want to do that, IRAs are the best one, again, because your kids don't have to pull the money out 10 years after the second of you passes away, or if you're single, 10 years after you pass away. You have to take all that money out during your peak earnings years, most likely. Okay? So think about that. Just, think about being generous. It's all the Lord's. You're the stewards, and giving back a portion to the Lord is a great thing. It doesn't take a lot of faith to give through your estate plan. It takes a lot of faith to give while you're alive, and that's a challenge for some people, but it does. But if you are going to be leaving something to the Lord through your estate plan or through your IRA, then you could do that. And again, it doesn't take any faith. It's just going to go where it goes, but it'll be blessed to say, this came through the IRA of so-and-so, who your ministries might know has passed away. That will be us, respectively, okay? And I tell everybody, and I say it all the time, if you have estate plans, review them every 5 years. Do they still reflect your intent? If they don't, you need to replace it. But replace them anyway at 10 years. Back to my example that says, Mom said this, Dad promised me that, and so on. It goes on and on. You erase 10 years of Mom said, Dad said type things in there, okay? Plus, you're updating anything anyway. But if you last did a will in 2010, there's a lot of living that's happened in the last 15 years, okay? And so when you're in that 15-year span, again, the kids have expectations, and they've gone off and done things and so on, or whoever your heirs are. So just replace it. It doesn't cost that much, but when you do that, it's so worth it, because then your estate affairs would be what we call in order. Everything's up to date, everything's current, and they say, as of this date, Mom might have said that in 2020, but in 2025, Mom or Dad signed a will that didn't include that. Now, you can always add a document on the back of it. You'll see that in the homegoing packet that's in your thing right there. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. But so Mom or Dad said this or that. You can add that on later, but they have to add it on. And ideally, you want to just swing by our office or go by your bank and have somebody notarize it for you, okay? Just to say, this is exactly my intent. And me, the witness, the notary, says this is exactly what's going on, okay? And then that whole idea of contested estates. Lots of hours of estate attorney fees in court, lots of court time, could be years. And, there's enough gossipy shows out there that will tell you that these families are still arguing over the estate of so-and-so, right? You don't want that to be your family or your heirs. Again, not to your immediate family, whoever you're giving it to. You don't want to be leaving the kind of mess that could be contested in court. It takes forever, and it takes all of the joy and blessing out of whatever you're trying to do to bless your heirs. Okay? So don't do that. Be very cautious. Okay, this document here, you have it in your document. So this is the estate decision-making. The cover looks like this. Estate decision-making process. There are 2 versions. One is for single people, one's for married people, okay? Now, I'm just going to talk to you a little bit of this. Turn to page 2 of that. And that's what I have up here, page 2, okay? The estate decision-making process consists of the following 6 steps. Now, there's way more in here to fill in. Lots of questions in there. So step number 1 is the transfer decision. Transfer from your estate to your heirs, okay? So how much of my estate should I give to my children? And how much should I give to charity? Okay? So we're Christians in the room here. God owns it all. So again, I recommend if you could put even a portion of that. But you can do it through your IRA if you have one. So that's the recommended way, because your home, your cars, and all that stuff, will get the taxable investment accounts, will get a step up in cost base. So they get that essentially tax-free, and you don't have to ever withdraw it. Okay? But the IRA, when you pull it out, it's ordinary income tax, even after death. Ordinary income tax and a 10-year clock to get it all out of there. And if not, 50% of it goes to the government. You definitely don't want to be doing that. And that's just laziness, okay? So don't do that. Think IRA first if you still have one. Second thing, treatment decision. Should I give the same amount to each of my children? And again, I mentioned what we did. We decided our kids, we may change that percentage because my two boys are doing, my daughters are younger, but two boys are doing really well. They don't really need anything from us. So we could change those percentages anytime we want to. But so here you have that. So should I give each of them the same assets? Well, if there's any business owners or real estate owners in here, you could put them in put properties into trust and say, my kids equally share in that. Great. But sometimes you say, hey, I want to give this business. I work with a family in Eastern Washington, and Dad had decided that the oldest son was going to get the company. So the other two kids, the son and the daughter, both, the son lives out of state. He went to go create his own pile. He's been very successful in Midwest. And the daughter works for the company, but she's not an owner. The son was, but the husband passed away at 69, a household accident. It was a little yard work accident, pushing a wheelbarrow full of rocks up a hill in their yard, and it tipped over and landed on him. And he died. Very vigorous, very healthy guy. And so then the son comes after mom. Dad intended to give me the rest of the company. True. And Dad was giving him shares every year. And it's a very successful company. And so he comes after mom to say, I want those shares now. Well, guess what? He wants it because he's building a real estate empire in their city in Eastern Washington. And so he wants to pull it very profitable. He wants all the money for himself. So that's where we got engaged. It's not necessarily what we do by design, but got engaged and had to stand up on behalf of mom to say, hey, mom owns those shares. You can't force it. So leave her alone. But he's making, and now things are calm. It's been over the last 3 years or so. But that's the kind of stuff that can happen. It wasn't clear. Dad at 69 never imagined he was going to pass away until he was probably 90 or 100. Again, a very vigorous guy. But it happened. But they had already decided the son's going to get the business. So the younger son, number 3 in the family, he went to college in the Midwest and never came home. He said, well, there's nothing here for me. So I just won't come home. And that's fine. He's been super successful, but doing something vast the family's not involved in at all. And then the daughter works for the company, and she's a lovely, lovely woman. But she's content, but they look at the oldest son. He's a bully. So the assets that Dad was passing on to his son turned the son into a bully. The son wasn't a bully until Dad passed away. Then he really started bullying him up. So be very cautious in that and really spell it out clearly. He never gave a timeline. He was just going to give shares every year. So he was, I want them all now. And he wanted them. He didn't want to pay for them. He just wanted them. So anyway, these kind of things can happen. It's Sad's Christian family. And the son is a Christian, but he had a group of Christian businessmen he met with regularly, and they were, just tell her you want the shares. So that was bad advice by those guys, but they weren't trained to give advice, okay? Next thing, the timing decision. When should I distribute the estate and relinquish control of my assets? Well, as I mentioned, Dad in that family had already given the majority, 65%, to the son. So he was in control of the company, but he wasn't in sole ownership of the company. Big difference, okay? And you can set up 2 classes of shares, voting and non-voting shares, quite common, so that he could have gifted, 2/3 of shares could have been 100% of the votes, okay? That's a different story, but mom still had a 35% vote in that. So anyway, you could do that, or properties, or whatever else you want. I'm going to jump down to the transformation decision. So should assets such as business be distributed to my heirs in their current form, or should they be transformed? I'm going to translate transformed, sold. Okay? Should I sell them before I give the business out? Okay? Or sell them upon my death. Now again, I mentioned the cost basis, yellow capital gains on that back to the date of original money put in. But if they sell after you die, then you owe no capital gains tax. It gets called a step up in cost basis. But you might say, hey, I want all those properties sold. I have one rental home, I want it sold. Because you don't want it to divide your kids or put multiple kids in charge of one asset, because they're all going to end up disagreeing. And by the 3rd generation, it's really a mess, okay? But 2nd generation might be tough. If the kids have been involved in that side, they might want to keep it. Hey, this is great. We get along great, and we have 2 kids, and we get $4,000 a month for this rental property. We get $2,000 a month each. This is great. But every so often, the roof needs to be replaced, or the plumbing needs to be repaired, yard maintenance, and so on. So it can be, for one person running, it's easy, but for multiple people who have different maybe statuses in life, it could be tough. Okay, jumping down to techniques. This is your wills and trusts and things like that, okay? There's lots and lots of kind of trusts. But typically what people would own is called a revocable living trust. Revocable living trust. And what you can do, things called dynasty trusts and things like that, and generation skipping trusts. There's lots of different kinds. So again, you have to have a fair amount of wealth to pass along to do that, but that's an issue of techniques. And then the talk decision, okay? So right here, how and when? When is the big deal? Our firm does a lot of those family meetings, we call them. Sit down with the family, and mom and dad share their hearts. We have them write up something that expresses their love for their kids and their desire that the kids would always walk and the grandkids would always walk with the Lord, and so on, and that this is what the plan is as of that day. But they just do it to be open about it. And that's not every family that does it, but to sit down and just set expectations. I work with a family that grandma, who's 91 now, I think, she and her husband, late husband now, won the lottery like 30 years ago, the Washington State Lottery, okay? So they have 2 daughters and a son. So 30 years ago, the son, who's like 52 now, something like that, the son said, I don't have to work. So he hasn't literally worked a day in his life since then, because he was sure he is going to be receiving a big inheritance, okay? Now, the oldest daughter and her now late husband, but longtime good friends of mine, but the husband passed away a few years ago, and his wife, who's again my friend and client, she has no idea what mom has, but she does know that when they first received that number from the lottery, you take that settlement, you can get it over 20 years, or you can take a lump sum. They took the lump sum. It really wasn't that much money. It was several $million, but it wasn't like $50 million or anywhere close to that. So anyway, they gave almost all of it away right away. So, well, we don't need the money. And so they gave most. So the son is sitting here now, 52 years old, hasn't worked a meaningful day of work in his life. And he's waiting around for his big inheritance. And I was just talking to my friend who's my client, who's a widow of a longtime good buddy. And she's expecting $250,000 from her mom's estate. And the son's sitting around waiting for his proportional share, $250,000. He's blown 30 years of his career waiting for $250,000 estate. Now, she's just guessing $250,000 because mom's never said a word. But she just looks at how mom's been living all these years, and she knows they were wildly generous when they got that lottery winning. So they gave most of it away. And the son just never connected the dots. So he's waiting around to be an heir for what could be a couple years' pay. Okay? So that's why you want to open up. And mom, again, to this day, still hasn't told her daughter, or her 2 daughters and son, what they're going to receive, so they don't know when. So how and when? It's really important to do that. Again, you don't have to be too specific, but just say it's not going to be life-changing money. That's a simple line. It's not going to be life-changing money, so you better go get a job. But they never said that to their son, okay? So here he is, 30 years of waiting for life-changing money, and his life's going to change in a way he could never have imagined it was going to be. So take that document home, and you just kind of work through that. But before you ever think about an attorney or filling out your LegalZoom or whatever it may be, you want to read through that document. Okay, and fill in the blanks as best you can, and it makes it a lot simpler. If not, the attorney's going to ask you questions like this, but some of these things in here are values. Rarely does an attorney say, when do you want to sit down and talk to your family? That's not what they do. So you do that. And you don't have to do it, but again, life-changing money, not life-changing money, but just give them some sense of direction. And we knew, in the last few years, my mom told us what they had. My dad hadn't said much, but my mom did, and so we all knew what that was all going to look like, which was fine. But we knew it wasn't going to be life-changing money for us, as I mentioned earlier. But we did know, and so that was good. We just, one less thing to wonder about. But we certainly would much rather have our parents still with us today than have any money, even if they gave us an outrageous sum of money. Okay, so that is your estate decision planning document over here. Again, this guy, the process. So that's a very important one to work your way through. And then you have these estate settlement. And considerations. A lot of things to consider around estate settlement, but number one, trust or wills. If you have it, I mentioned your executor would be over your will, and your trustee would be over your trust. They do the exact same function, but the wills have to go through a process called probate. You've heard that term before, probate, right? There's a special court for that, and it takes a lot of time, requires an attorney, and a lot of time meaning typically 9 months or so, in and out of court. And it's expensive, and it's public, okay? Trusts are private because they don't go through the court. Trust completely bypasses court. But it's a public process. Your estate documents are up on their server for anybody in the world to see. So if you want some privacy, maintain your privacy after you've left, how much did old so-and-so leave when they passed away? That's it? Or wow. Then, and so people go look through these things, right? So they look through, and then, some people on the other side of my industry, more stockbrokers, they search through it. Who's going to receive all this money? I'll give them a call. Hey, I'm sorry to hear about the passing of so-and-so, but I'd love to talk to you about it. I understand you're going to get a lot of money. Do you want your kids getting those calls? No. But again, if you pre-gifted it, like I mentioned earlier, giving while you're living, one of our principles from our founder, Ron Blue, again, was do your giving while you're living so you're knowing where it's going. That's a good one, okay? It's an important one because you can give your kids a little bit of money if you have extra, give them some money and see how they do with it. Check in with them, say, hey, what did you ever do with that money I gave you or we gave you? And just to see how they do, because they may have never had a surplus of $5,000, $10,000, $25,000, whatever, but it's a good chance for you to do something there. Another thing you could do is you could pay medical bills directly. Okay, you could pay the medical provider directly. You could have a $100,000 medical bill. If you have the money to cover it, you could pay the providers, the hospital, the doctors, directly. And that doesn't count toward your annual what they call gift tax exclusion. You can just pay them directly. That's what this client in Eastern Washington, the daughter had some real big medical issues, and they just paid it directly. She didn't know. I said, why don't you just pay it directly? I can do that. So, and then likewise, I have a lot of people we work with that pay for their grandchildren's Christian schools. Okay, they want the kids in better schools. Schools have degraded since we were kids. And so they're doing that, and they're paying the school directly. Don't give it to your kids to pay it. That's part of that. They'll track the dollars to your kids. Estate tax, gift tax might be doing that. Don't pay the school directly. Pay the medical provider directly. You can do it perfectly legal since the beginning of the U.S. government, okay? So that's important to think about if you're in a position to help. You don't have to pay it all. Maybe you just help them get started or something like that. But that's a really important thing. So again, the probate process is very public. And so if you want to be a private person, maintain privacy, then do that. So next thing you see up here is I mentioned trust costs more, but they settle more quickly. So I think you got that point here. And you have to, it's a complex process to settle an estate. So just be mindful of the fact that the hiring, you can hire a third party. We are a trust company. We could be executors, not me personally. I'm in the wealth management side. We have a trust division. We're the only Christian trust company that operates in all 50 states. But this is not a pitch for our services. You can find a local trust company around here too if you want. But the idea of outsourcing it, so you don't give your oldest child. That's what everybody does. Oh, my firstborn child's going to be my executor. Isn't that going to be great? And that child says, who do I call? So, and it's hard. And a trustee is not that hard, but this whole probate process, so we get some calls for that. So if you went to a corporate, they charge like 1% of the whole estate to do it, and they do the final estate tax return, which you have to do within 9 months of the passing, and take care of everything. I tell you, it's a funny story. We were, since 1979, our firms existed, and we became a trust company in 2017, so 8 years ago. Through a merger, we became a trust company because we got asked all the time to do that kind of work. So we did. It's called the highest level of fiduciary, so which means a fiduciary is someone who can only act in the best interest of their clients. That's the federal definition for it, legal definition. So we sat down with a local estate attorney here who we know well. We've worked with him a lot. And we said, hey, guess what? We're becoming a trust company. His first question shocked us. He said, who's going to change the locks? Excuse me? He said, yeah, who's going to change the locks? And so I asked, I said, so why do you ask that question? Well, you know what? An executor or a corporate trustee and so on, the first thing they do is they call a locksmith. You all see locksmith trucks driving, vans driving around all the time, right? You wonder, how many people are changing their locks? There's so many locksmith vans. I see them around just driving around on 405 and 5 and so on. Because the kids go in and they said, Mom said I could have the piano. Out it comes the piano mover, right? And then you see, Dad said I could have, this beautiful 5th generation painting on the wall and so on. And the kids go through. You want to get the locksmith there first because the kids can't get in. Honestly, it seems crazy, but stuff disappears, especially as you move up the wealth spectrum. Kids get a little greedier, but they always loved that painting. They always loved that beautiful Queen Anne chair. They always loved that piano. They always loved things like that. Or they may even have a safe at home. Kids know, and there's a bag of gold coins in there. That's popular too. So, but they go in and they help themselves to stuff. So by the time the corporate executor or whoever gets there, or even the personal family member, but you get in there and then you got to go, they call it clawback, got to claw that stuff back. But Mom promised me that piano was mine, that Queen Anne chair was mine, that painting. That's like literally what they do. So we didn't know. We were just becoming it. We hadn't even become one yet. We were in this, buying this company. But anyway, long story short is that it gets messy. Your stuff might be valuable, very valuable to you, maybe less valuable, but there are some items in it that might be valuable. So it doesn't apply to every family. And I'm giving you sort of these crazy examples, but they do happen. It's not anything that we don't see a lot of, but it's just not super common. So anyway, so you look at those kind of things and a bunch of other little doodads down there. But the during the process of grieving your passing, you're also asking one of those at least heirs to be your executor or your trustee, and they're in this, and they have to learn. They know nothing about it, and they have to learn, like, where are mom and dad's estate documents, and how do I get going on this, and who do they work with? Do we know their attorney, and all that? So it's a lot. So while they're processing, or maybe deferring the grieving process out they just have to deal with these things pretty quickly. So it's hard. So again, having that little discussion once you get everything in order, just have high level. Hey, my attorney is so and so on. They can call the attorney with a death certificate. The other thing is, if you have a lot of accounts, if you worked at 3 or 4 or 5 companies, and you have 401k here, 401k there, and so on, you do your heirs a great favor to consolidate those into one IRA. And I'll tell you why, because you have to have a certified death certificate for each account to go into Schwab with one, Fidelity with one, U.S. Bank with one, and name your firms out there, right? And maybe they're the national type guys that do like ADP and so on. It's a really complex process. It just makes it even harder. So anyway, but the idea is in the time frame when heirs are grieving, that they're going to have to also figure out what to do now, and it's a hard transition for people, a very hard transition for people. Okay, so up here we have we're on to this one. I got a glare right on it. It says Oh yeah, reduce the risk of chaos. That's what I want to say here. Reduce the risk of chaos. I mentioned the chaos. It happens, and I don't want to scare you into this stuff, but you take all of this out when you update your estate document. It all goes away. It's really simple. Take it all out. So it could be really, really, really easy for your heirs to do it. And that's, again, I didn't want to just like put the hammer on you. I hope you don't feel that. But this is reality, what actually happens when you pass away. It happens every day. It happens to all of us. Remember, and if you don't have it, you don't know who's going to get your stuff. The judge decides, the judge you don't know, and so on. So you just create this tempest of mess. And if you have a question on, just call me. Our office, again, just off the 195th exit. Just call me. I'll be happy to answer any questions. No charge for that stuff. Just call and say, and we have other guys like I mentioned Chris Gotcher. Some of you know Chris, been at the church a really long time. Call us and just say, hey, I just have a question for you. We can't give legal advice. But what we can do is we can guide you through the process, maybe to get to the right attorney, or maybe you're trying to figure out, what are the things I need to do to think differently about my kids? And one's wildly successful financially, one's not. How do I do that? We're happy to answer those questions all day long. That's what we're called to this. This is not because we're a Christian firm, we're trained in all the biblical application and so on. It's more passing that along because no one else is trained in this kind of stuff. So, okay. So the idea is now we move into the homegoing planning packet over here. If you pull that one out, that's the other document inside your folder. Homegoing planning packet. So in here is every last thing about your life and your wishes that you wanted, okay? And it's not a legal document, but it's an important document because as you go through, you can put down, you could say which songs you want sung at your memorial service. You can pre-write your obituary. Or at least put all the facts in. Someone can write it later, but put the facts in. You grew up here, son or daughter of so-and-so, and you went to such and such high school and college if you went to college, worked at these different companies along the way. And you guys, I'm sure you've all looked on legacy.com, which is pretty much where all the obituaries go now. But look out there, and somebody had to know that stuff. So you can put it all in there. But the idea, and you can also put in there some of the things I mentioned that if you really want that nice chair to go to somebody, that nice painting, or even the home to go to one of the kids in particular. It may be that, let's just say you have $1 million home and you have 2 kids, they have $1 million of assets. Hey, one really wants the home. Boom, you're done. The other one really wants the assets or don't want the home. They get the assets. That's nice and simple. Rarely is it that simple, okay? But homes are so valuable around here. If you still own a home, it's so valuable, that could be a big chunk of your estate. So it's a little hard because it doesn't divide into 2 or 3 or 4 portions, depending on what you want. So you can put all those things. There's a lot of great questions in there. It doesn't take that long, and it doesn't have to be perfect. But if you want to go through it, just write that stuff down and put it next to your estate documents, which is your wills or trust, right? So put it with them so that somebody's going to one day find. You can tell the kids. We have a binder in our home. My kids all know where that binder is. It has our current wills in it and has our homegoing document in it. So the kids know. They haven't even read it. They could if they wanted to, but it's in our house, and I don't see them ever in that room that it's in, so that's good. But they, they know generally where we're at and all that kind of stuff. So, but that is a really important document because, again, that grieving process, you have to make 1,000 decisions. And quite often, I'm sure all of you have found that memorial services aren't 1 week later or 2 weeks later, oftentimes 2 or 3 or 4 months later, because you want to give the family time to gather, but you also have so much stuff to process that you just can't focus on that. This helps to shorten that process if you want it to be so. So anyway, you can put in a budget for memorial service too, for if you want to have some refreshments there and things like that. But if you've dreamed of what you've gone to, we've all gone to lots of memorial services over the years, and if you want to do that, if you've been to some, you said, boy, that was really, really nice. I would like to have something as dignified for my memorial service. That's the place to put it in, and your family will find it, and they'll say, oh, this is what mom or dad wanted, or aunt so-and-so or uncle so-and-so wanted. This is what they wanted. Let's start here. And then you meet with Jeff or somebody else here, and you work through that. And, I've been to several memorials here, and they've been beautiful. Really respectful and honoring of the Lord and honoring of the life of the deceased. So as you can do that, it just gives you a chance to speak your voice into it. If not, it's going to all happen by somebody else after you're gone, and once you're done fighting over all your stuff. so anyway, that's that. So over here you see, this is just a little cartoon, and it says here, the Pharaoh's final request was buried with his cat. What does the cat say? Woof, okay? So there's a point behind that one, and the point is that somebody else, the cat, is trying to change your estate plan, okay? So be mindful of the fact that might happen, because you can say it all you want, but if it's not written down, it's not going to happen. But in this case, you have to also pay attention to who's receiving the stuff and how they're interpreting what your intent was, okay? So anyway, you got some next steps up here as well. And so on the next steps, locate basically find your estate documents and review them, okay? You might not even know where they are. Or maybe you wrote them years ago. Read through them. They're not that complicated. Usually they're only several pages. But read through and say, is that it? Complete the homegoing planning packet, the one we just touched on right there. Great thing to have. Put multiple copies, okay? One in your home someplace, maybe one in your safe deposit box, or one, like we have a lot of people's copies of wills just in our, we have a digital archive, very secure. But do that. And that way, somebody, they're going to call somebody and say, hey, my parents passed away. We don't know where they kept their wills, okay, or their trust documents, okay? So if they don't know who the attorney is, you might find an advisor who knows, other advisor, not just legal advisor, who knows. CPAs typically don't hold on to these kind of documents. They'll hold your tax documents, but not other documents. So anyway, so that's important. And then I mentioned giving while living. Do your giving while you're living so you're knowing where it's going. That's something else you can look at, a way of whether you wanted to help your kids get into a home, or I mentioned maybe paying for medical bills, or perhaps paying for grandkid tuition, or maybe one of your kids as an adult, mid-career change, 40-something years old, you might be able to help them out with that. If they're, everyone's pressed for free cash. And as a society, we tend to spend more than we earn. That's just the American way, sadly. But they may need some help, or maybe something along those lines. So, and as mentioned, sometimes we hang on to our assets, and we see our kids really struggling, especially when the grandkids are going off to college. Another thing you do is put money into a 529 if you want your grandkids to go to college, or if their parents do. That's another thing a lot of people do, is they put money away. It's future money for their kids, but trust me, the kids will be really appreciative of any money to the 529, because when your child goes off to college, it's really, really expensive. So those of us who are on the back end of that, meaning my kids are out of college, and I'm sure many of yours are if they went to school, that is such a relief on the budget. Even just travel, so expensive. So, and then that will also, when you do stuff like that, it reduces your estate and makes it less taxable to the state of Washington if you have something above $4.4 million. Again, considering your home is part of that, your cars, jewelry, and so on, that's all part of your estate. It's not just your investment account, your retirement account, or whatever. So just be mindful. You want to be looking at that number, say, how do I end up having to not pay so much, my heirs pay so much in tax? I want more to go to charity. I want more to go to my kids and grandkids and so on. So you could be a little clever by just paying attention to it. It's not anything it's not a gene anybody is born with. Okay? It's one of those things you have to say, I really want to do this. And I think that's why, I got invited in today to just remind you that this is something that we have to actually go take the first step on and the second step on, and however many steps it takes to complete it. But it's just really important. So I'm hoping to have given you enough light on what you need to do here. But we're back down here. Sorry, I went the wrong way on that one. That was the reverse one. So the final words from the word. So if any of you lacks wisdom, you should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given to you. James 1:5, okay? So know that if you're afraid of this thing, just say, Lord, I really need your help. I don't really want to do this. I have no aptitude for it, and so on. I don't even know who to call for an attorney, et cetera. And, well, I guess your neighbors, your fellow church members, and it must be getting near the end here. So just ask the Lord. And all of a sudden, be thinking of somebody you know, a friend from your life group, or a friend from Encore, or another friend from church, or a neighbor, someone like that, Bible study. So, but you just have to ask the Lord. He will direct your steps, but he gives generously to all without finding fault. So that's important. So, as I said, the title is Finishing Well. My charge to all of you is to finish well. I can't do that for you, but finish well. It's your final act of biblical stewardship that your family will see. So it just puts you in a spot where you'll have peace of mind, and your kids will have peace of mind, and or your heirs, whoever they may be, peace of mind, and it's going to end up helping you feel like, you know what, mom or dad, or aunt or uncle, they did it right. They did it right. They didn't leave a mess behind. They left me a blessing instead of a mess. But so many people leave mess. So I am open for questions. Does anybody have a question? Any questions? There you go. Yes, sir.
Yeah, my mother-in-law has a revocable living trust.
Good.
That was written in Colorado, but she's now living in Washington State. Are there any issues that we need to be?
Okay, the question is, his mother-in-law has a revocable living trust written in Colorado. She's now living here. Well, I'll tell you what. Yes and no. I mean, I would go to a local attorney and say, what do you recommend? And I say that because it's still valid in Colorado, but you have to travel to Colorado. But it's a trust, so you can bypass the courts. Okay, remember, if it's a will, I would move it. But a trust, you can probably leave it where it is because it's that's it. But I would just have a quick call with an attorney and say, what do we do? They're going to sell you their update, but say, what are the downsides if I don't do it? But it should be fine because it's a trust. But if it's a will, you definitely want to be having it in the state in which you live. Great question. Yes, right behind you.
What quantity of your answer represents forming a trust? How much wealth is needed
Oh, there you go.
for
Okay. Thanks,
forming
Lisa.
a trust?
$1. Okay, there's no minimum on a trust. It's more. Remember, it costs more money, but it settles easier. So there's really no minimum on it. But if you have, I would say it'd be worth it. If you have $1 million or $2 million or more, then I strongly consider a trust, just because it's probably going to go to multiple pieces. So
And real simple, what's your address, please?
the firm's address? We're on North Creek Parkway, 19820 North Creek Parkway in Bothell, down there. So again, if you want to come by, just call ahead. But hey, I need a notary to sign my documents. You can do your own thing. Just swing by. They'll do it. I'm not the notary, but yes, one second, sir. So we're happy to do that for you. It's just a service that we offer for free. So stop in and do it. And that's the last roadblock. People say, well, I got it done. Now what? So what you do is get it notarized. And again, we're more than happy to do that. This gentleman, then you. Yes, sir.
Could you tell me the function of a charitable remainder trust?
Okay, you've all heard the question. So a charitable remainder trust. What that's primarily used for is you have your favorite ministry or ministries, and you want to make them a gift, but get a lifetime income from it. Okay, so a lifetime income, let's just say you gave $100,000. We call them CRTs, charitable remainder trust. So we put it into a CRT, and you're going to get 8% a year, depending on your age. You get a smaller percent if you're younger, say 60s or so, and a larger percent if you're 80s, because you have a shorter lifespan, right? So you'll get, say, 8% on that, 6%, whatever the numbers are. It varies by charity and by interest rates. But so let's just say you're going to get 8%. So you give them $100,000, and they're going to give you $8,000 a year for the rest of your life. And then when you pass away, that money goes straight to the charity. You don't own it. It already is technically part of that, but then you don't own it. The heirs don't own it, and it's out of your estate. So it's a good way to bless the ministry, given while living, while you're alive, and still get some income from it. Okay, great question. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
So if I have questions, and I call Blue Trust. You guys will answer questions?
Of course, yeah. We'll answer your questions for
Is
free.
there
Not the
other
legal
charges?
questions, but yeah.
Are there charges for answering questions?
For questions, no. We never charge for questions.
Any
So,
questions about trust?
nope, 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 no. So we charge for services, but no, we do financial planning and we do investment management. Excuse me. Questions are questions. We're happy to answer them. So remember, we're stewarding what God put on our hearts to do, which is infuse biblical wisdom with the technical financial, okay? So we answer questions all day long, every day, for as many people as want to call in with questions. We're happy to do it because it really helps the Christian, because we only work with Christians, so they need help. So we want to give the help. We don't charge for that, okay? If it becomes a lot of work, that's a different story, but we only charge for financial planning, which is a written financial plan, and investment management, which is managing people's investments, okay? So yes, we're happy to answer your questions anytime you want to call. And it goes to all of you.
Let's go
Here first, and then we'll come over to you, because Lisa's right here.
I just had a quick question. I have a life insurance policy. I wanted to see if it seems silly to have it put into a trust to disperse to my nephews because they're not very good with money and they're young.
Okay, well that's a different. So that's a different kind of a trust. Okay, so she has a life insurance policy. So it's going to your nephews. So that could go into a trust. Remember, you get a life insurance death benefit. It's tax-free money. Okay, so we can go into the trust, whatever the face amount is on, 100,000, 500,000, whatever. That's going to go in. You could put that into a trust for. There's something called a spendthrift trust, and it does exactly what you might think. Who's a spendthrift? Somebody money goes in and out. But how old are your nephews?
28 and 17.
Okay, yeah. So I'd be more concerned about the 17-year-old than 28-year-old who's probably trying to make their way in the world. But yeah, so that you just chat with an attorney about that. But you can create a trust for that. But there's a point where you have to be very clear in the trust. How much do you want to give them per year?
To give them a monthly.
Right. That can do that, yeah. That a monthly structured payout type thing, yeah, you can do that, but it'd have to go through that trust. Now, you need an attorney to set that up. But go talk with them. Don't get caught up on me saying spendthrift trust. That's one of many kinds of trusts, but that's typically what that would go for. Yeah, great question. Thank you. In the back.
Yeah, just a quick question in regards to old documents. So wills that you've had that you made when your children were younger, okay? And do you totally shred those and get rid of them, or do you save them and say this is an old will, this is the new will? Do you have advisors that can go through what you already have and just kind of do a run through and say, yep, this looks great? Because
Yeah.
if you do something online, like I did myself, how do I know that that is good for the eternity of my life?
Okay. So good question. So let me tell you the benefit of keeping an old will around. So when your kids were younger, you had guardianship in there and telling who's going to get your kids and money to follow to help support and so on. So the benefit of that is to show that to your kids to say, hey, here's how we did it way back when. But there's no legal benefit to it if you replace it with a newer one. So no need to keep the old trust, except, again, the thought process. Like we had created a committee. My siblings are from the Boston area. My wife's family is from Bellevue. So we created a committee of family and a couple of really, really close friends that were in our life group. And we really just trusted them. We saw how they parented their kids. We thought, okay, you guys are so aligned with us. So for our kids, we wanted them to be able to see that. So it's not legally valid anymore because it's been replaced. But so the only benefit would be as a teaching tool. Okay, but it is a blessing to, we showed our kids like, oh, that's a really good idea. But, because again, I've got grandkids here and grandkids in the Dallas, Texas area. Okay, so 2 different states and so on, but different states, different laws. But the benefit is that they did appreciate seeing that way back when. And we did that back when I first dragged my wife, shamed her into coming back into our attorney friend's office to get that signed. But it was an important teaching tool for our kids to see what the options were. So great question. Thank you. Lisa in the back? Okay.
Just want to know, if you own your own home, is it better to have it in a will or a trust?
Well, it depends on the overall value of the property, I think. So if you think you have a complex estate, I would put it into a trust. If you think you have a simple estate, then, again, probate isn't a problem. But if you have maybe more wealth than your neighbors think you have, and you don't want them to see it publicly through the probate courts, then if you want to keep that private, you can do that through a trust. It's simpler and quicker to do a trust, but for a home, it's just another asset. It's like an investment account, an IRA, things like that. So it's going to be sold anyway, most likely, unless it's going to be given away to somebody. So the trust is simple. Once it's set up, it's simple to execute, very simple. So I would be more concerned about that, but also the privacy is a big deal, and then the simplicity. But it's not going to take forever. You pretty much settle that out within 9 months. So someone will clean up the house, fix it up, paint it, and get it, re-landscape it, and put it on the market for top dollar, and then your heirs will receive that. So I wouldn't worry about it unless you, again, have a lot of money and you want to keep it private. Okay, good question. Thank you.
Worst case scenario.
Yeah.
A widower, hypothetically, the wife is gone, the widower, and I've done nothing. There's no power of attorney, there's no trust, I've done nothing. And upon my death, it all goes to probate. What's the worst case scenario? The government seizes it all? What?
No, the government won't seize any of it, but except if you have a large one, they'll seize a chunk in taxes, estate taxes. But no, it all gets tied up in the court. Okay, so your heirs they don't have the rights to anything. Okay, but also now I mentioned the wills. There are two other really, 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 really important documents. One is your durable power of attorney, which is your financial delegation. Who's going to manage my financial affairs? And two is your healthcare power of attorney. Super important. Someone local. So I mentioned I have 2 sons and 2 daughters. One of my boys lives here. He's really successful in business, thankfully. And but he's here, and he has my wife's and my healthcare proxy. If we can't do it for one another, he has it. Why? Because he lives in Duval. We live in Woodinville. So he can easily get over to Evergreen Hospital or someplace like that and make a decision. My other son is in the financial world doing well, and so he knows the business inside and out. And so he's the financial power of attorney, called the durable power of attorney. Okay, so we split it between our 2 boys, but both of them have business degrees. Both of them are in business and doing well. So one's, deep dive, really deep into the financial world in Texas, and the other one is here. So, and we trust them both. They're walking with the Lord, and so they can make healthcare the pull the plug decision. My oldest son, as the oldest child, yeah, he'd have a hard time doing it, but he would do it. So I treat him really well. So because he has the power to pull the plug for my wife and me. But no, I'm my wife's, and he's the secondary, and so again, I'm my wife's, and vice versa. I'm sorry. So that's how that works. Okay.
The financial advisor has our beneficiary note stated in there, and if something happens to both of us, then that beneficiary is in control of the financial portion of our estate, correct?
Well, okay, there's a beneficiary for your retirement accounts, okay? But for your other, you just have heirs beyond that. There's not a beneficiary. But you could have a trustee in there. If you have a lot of assets or business interests or real estate interests, things like that, a trustee would be the one that stepped in to kind of manage all the affairs according to your wishes, which in a trust document, it's spelled out exactly what you want that trust to do. So it's a lot more specific than would be a will necessarily, because your trustee could be, I mentioned, a corporate type trustee who that's all they do is settle estates. But they could also manage trusts too if they're multi-generational. If you have money that you want, or a business you want to keep going for the 2nd or 3rd generation, having a trustee in there, it could be a family member, but who's overseeing that. The buck has to stop with someone. But the beneficiary is a recipient, not necessarily a controller. The trustee is a controller, somebody in charge of it, okay? Is that answering your question? Okay, good. Yes, ma'am.
No, we're back here.
Oh, okay.
Sorry about that. Hey, my question might be similar. For IRAs and 401ks and all that, do those assets become public if you have a will?
IRAs?
So in other words, you mentioned the difference between a will and a trust, that the trust would be private. So, but if you have beneficiaries, didn't you say it goes directly to the beneficiaries? So it bypasses all the will?
The probate court cannot overrule your IRA beneficiaries. That goes straight. Upon your passing, you present the certificate of death, money goes immediately, okay? So and the fiduciary in the middle, the custodian, usually again, Schwab, Fidelity, somebody like that, those guys, they see that death certificate and they immediately move it into a new account for the recipient. Now, I'm not sure that's listed because the court has no say over it, but it might be in a list of assets. That's all part of what would be presented to the court. So I don't know the answer, good question, but I don't know the answer if that's seen, but I know they have no control over it. And as soon as you bring that death certificate in, it goes from that account, they look at the beneficiaries, say, okay, you have two beneficiaries, half goes here, half goes there, because you've said, I want 50-50. If you said 34-66, it goes in those things. That's not at all done by the court, and it's going to be done the moment that death certificate's presented. So, well, okay, yeah. I don't know if that's listed as an asset, but it's certainly the court has no control over it. So, good question. If you want to give me your name and number, I can find out and give you a call later today. Again, the question being, is it public? How much is in your IRA? I don't think it should be because they have no control over it. But when you look at your overall state tax due, it would be on the tax return. But that's not public. Okay, your state tax, your death tax in Washington State, that's not public info. So it would be listed there, but it's not anything for the court to decide. So I doubt it's in the thing, because again, that decision's already made. The court focuses on the things that the court is called to do, which is settle the estate with reasonable judgment and so on. So that would be bypassing that. It will only be filed with Washington State if you're above 4.4 million total. You have to put the amount of what that was in there. Okay, whether it's Roth IRA, an IRA, 401k, it would have to be listed on the assets for Washington State to see that. But again, only Washington State would see that. Okay, do I see a hand somewhere else in here? Yes, right here, ma'am. And then we'll come back to gentleman in the back.
So I'm a little confused about where you have your will, that what you said at the beginning, as far as if you lived in Colorado and now you moved here, that it would be Colorado that would control, that would be the laws that you're going by?
The Colorado courts, because it's written in Colorado, you have to go to Colorado to settle the estate.
Okay.
Now you could just hire an attorney. You don't have to go. Hire the attorney there to represent you, but it's settled out of state versus doing it in Seattle.
Okay, but the laws then that pertain to you, like the $4 million and then taxes
4.4,
here in Washington, if your assets are here in Washington, regardless of where the will is made, it's going to be subject to the tax system here in Washington?
If you have a Washington driver's license, a Washington voter ID, and so on, and you're claiming that on your IRS 1040 every year, you're a Washington resident. So the trust is out there, but that person will be a Washington resident. So they.
If your assets are here and you have all of that in Colorado, would it be the Colorado taxes then?
No, it would be the Washington taxes, because out there, that's where it's settled in the court, but it would be on where you live. But again, it takes all the question out of it if you just update the documents for Washington State. So I don't really know directly Colorado law, but it would be super unlikely. Like for my parents, Florida, they would just have to settle it down there, 1,000 miles away. So it was much simpler to move it into Washington State and update it all and make it a trust.
Is there a loophole if you have a residence like in Arizona that has no 4
No.
million cap?
Yeah, they have no estate tax in Arizona, yeah. Yep. So yeah, if you're an Arizona resident, good. Just make sure you spend 6 months and 1 day there every year, and you're registered to vote there, and your driver's license and your cars are registered, and so on for Arizona, so you don't look like a Washington person trying to dodge the tax. If you have above about 4.4 million.
So if your properties were here and you have 9 months in Arizona, you would pay Arizona tax?
Yeah, you're a resident of Arizona because you live there for 6 months and 1 day. You're a resident of Arizona, officially. But make sure you're registered to vote, driver's license, car plates and all that stuff. Just make yourself look like an Arizona resident too. So, okay. Yes?
Could you comment on the recent inheritance tax, which we've been blessed by the legislature with, and how that may affect us?
The state one?
The inheritance tax.
The new Washington one?
Yeah.
I can't comment on that yet because we're still waiting. It just got signed. We haven't studied it yet. So good question, but I don't know yet. And I want to be cautious not to give you something. We just haven't studied it yet. We'll be talking about that in the coming weeks. But I think it just got signed, a week or two ago? But so I don't know but the inheritance tax of the roughly, it's just under 4.4 million, that doesn't change. That's a fixed number, by the way. A lot of these things are indexed for inflation. But that one doesn't. That's just 4.4. But I don't know beyond that, sir. But again, you give me your name and number, I'll look into it and give you, shoot you an email backward. Okay.
Can you tell me how long should you keep like wills and deeds and everything after a death. And I'm thinking my parents, my mom was the last survivor, and she's gone. Estate's been, handled about a year now, or a couple of years now,
Yep.
and that. So, but I was her executor. So how long do I need to keep all of that legal stuff?
Okay, good question. Until everything's settled, and once it's final, there's no contest, I would say 2 or 3 years after, just in case somebody pops out and says, hey, what about this? You want to have a copy of that. But, this day and age, you can probably have it on your computer, right, scanned in. There's no reason to dump it, but there's really no need for it. So, again, once everything's really settled and the court's pronounced final judgment on it, that's it. And the court has a copy anyway, so if somebody contests it, they have to do it during that window. So you should be fine. Yep.
I have a question. My current will has 2 of my children, my 2 sons, as co-executors. I met with my 4 kids recently, and now my daughters want to also be added. With maybe a stipulation of 2 or more have to be in agreement. So I'm not sure how that works or if that's advisable or what say you?
Well, so 2 is company, 3 is a crowd. I don't know what 4 is, but it sounds chaos, right? So, but why do your daughters want to get in on it?
So they'll have a say.
Now, so you have the say. Whatever you put in that document, the rest is just really mechanical. Okay, so I have the same thing, by the way. I just wanted to go straight to my firm and say, guys, my boys have young kids, right? If we die early, that's not the family bloodline. But if we should, then the gene pool says you're probably going to live a little longer. But still, if they did, they got little kids, they got big jobs and all this stuff. They don't need it, but they begged us, please, please, please let us do it. So they're co-executors, but if either one can't perform, both of them are out, and it goes to my company. And my firm is a successor trustee if the kids don't get along, but there's no benefit. I would say keep it as simple as you could possibly do. Thankfully, the boys get along really, really well, but keep it as simple. Do not think of adding a 3rd person or 4th person. Your boys will appreciate you so much later. Okay, so yes, in the back,
back to financial accounts. Are you familiar with a joint tenant account?
Of course, yeah. Yep.
Is that considered similar to an IRA? Or
No. That's an account structure. An IRA, first of all, that's a taxable account. A joint, you might see JTWROS, joint tenant with rights to survival, or a JCP, joint community property. Those are very, very common if you're married, or even just sharing. It could be a child and a parent. But so an IRA is a tax deferred account. Those are always IRAs, or 403Bs or 401Ks and so on. That means no money has been paid in taxes on that earned income. So ordinary income tax is doing that. A joint property account says that if 2 owners and one passes away, the other one assumes sole ownership. That's it. It's as simple as that. So, but it's a taxable account only for a joint tenant account or a joint community property account. And the IRA is it's a pre-tax account. That's a post-tax account. So, I tell you what, I don't know how long this goes. I want to introduce in the back my fellow advisor and good friend, Tyson Hutton back there. We work together, both advisors at Blue. So do we need to, I see some people have gotten up and leaving. Lisa, I don't know how long this goes till, but.
You can do what you want, but I'm going to say maybe we just split the room.
Yeah, I'd say maybe give permission to people to leave who want to leave.
Side, and he can answer questions on the other. Or if you guys need to get,
we can do it together. But
if you need to get up and leave,
I want to let people go who are thinking, okay, I got my affairs in order here, so they can let go, and we'll stick around. Okay.
Yeah,
so,
if you guys need to leave, feel free to stand up and go at any point.
Yeah, and we won't be offended at all. So, thank you. Hi.